What if I told you that a trainee who was once eliminated later became one of the key members of a world-famous girl group? And what if I told you that the team could have ended with just 7 members, but in the very last moment became 9, and changed K-pop history forever? This is not just a debut story. Someone was chosen, someone was eliminated, and someone was called back. And all of those moments came together to create the group we now know as Twice. Today, they look like a perfectly complete team. But their beginning was far more unstable, far more intense, and far more cinematic than most people realize. Every beginning starts with an original plan. But Twice was not born from the original plan. They were not a group that started with these exact 9 members already decided. They were not even moving forward under the name Twice from the start. At that time, inside JYP, multiple possibilities were moving at once. Who would debut first? Which combination would be the strongest? Who could survive on stage? Nothing was completely decided, so the beginning of Twice was not the launch of a finished team. It was more like a collision of unfinished possibilities. And the stage where that uncertainty exploded was the survival program 16. This was not just another audition show. 16 trainees competed for a spot in JYP's new girl group. But what people really watched was not just competition. They watched desperation, fear, talent, and heartbreak. On stage, each performance lasted only a few minutes. But behind those few minutes were years of training. Some of them were desperate to debut. Some felt that if this chance slipped away, there might never be another one. That's why 16 felt so brutally honest. If you did well, you moved forward. If you wavered, you were pushed back. And in the end, it showed that even if everyone shared the same dream, they would not all reach the same ending. Right there, inside that fierce story, the future members of Twice began to reveal who they were. Some caught attention with bright energy, some overwhelmed the stage with powerful performance, some quietly endured and proved themselves through consistency, and some were not noticed at first, but became more unforgettable as time went on. What makes this even more interesting is that Twice was not formed simply by gathering the best trainees. Twice cannot be explained by skill alone. Star power, balance, public appeal, individual character, team chemistry, and the ability to capture hearts. Even off the stage, all of that mattered. That is why the final announcement felt even more dramatic. There were results people expected, but there were also twists no one saw coming. And when talking about the origin story of Twice, there are 2 names that can never be left out: Momo and Suyu. Momo experienced the pain of elimination. And normally, in a survival show, elimination means the end. But for Momo, the story did not end there. She came back from the edge. Her performance skills, her presence, and the power she had to complete the group on stage, those were not things that could simply be erased by one result. So in the end, her name was called again. And that moment remains, even now, one of the most dramatic scenes in Twice's entire history. Suyu's addition was also special. Many viewers had already noticed her star power. She had the kind of presence that came through the screen immediately. It was not something you could explain only by saying she was pretty. It was the kind of power that naturally pulled people's eyes toward her. And beyond that, there was the sense that she could grow into something even bigger. That possibility, in the final moment, became a choice that changed the future of the team. And just like that, the original plan changed. The expected frame broke apart. And in the end, Twice became 9. That was the moment their real story truly began. Because there is a huge difference between forming a team and completing one. The 9 members were all very different. Different personalities, different strengths, different energies. Some were strongest on stage. Some shined in variety shows. Some had a special gift for connecting with fans. On the surface, they looked completely different, but somehow, when they stood together, they shined even brighter. That was when the meaning of the name Twice started to come alive. Once through the ears, once through the eyes, once through the music, once through the performance. And as time passed, people began to understand. This was not just a pretty girl group. This was a group you wanted to keep watching and keep cheering for. Then finally, in 2015, Twice made their debut. Their first step was full of excitement. But it was also a test. Because survival show groups are always questioned at the beginning. Can they really last? Will the public truly love them? Is this lineup really right? Twice answered those questions, not with words, but with results. With every song, every stage, every comeback, their color became clearer, and the members completed one another. More and more, this was not a team built around just one standout person. It was a team that became stronger by filling in each other's weaknesses. And maybe that is the biggest reason Twice has been loved for so long. Looking back, the birth of Twice was not the result of a perfect plan. It was closer to a miracle, built from uncertainty, competition, elimination, twists, and final choices. And that is exactly why it feels so special. Not because they were perfect from the beginning, but because they walked through imperfection and still found their place. Maybe that is why people connect so deeply with Twice. Because this is not the story of people who started out complete. It is the story of people who shook, struggled, and still found where they belonged. And maybe that story still means something today. Sometimes our plans fall apart. Sometimes we get pushed away from the path we thought was ours. But that does not always mean it is over. Sometimes, the unexpected choice becomes the most defining moment of your life. That is what the birth of Twice really is. A story where elimination was not the end. A story where an unexpected addition was not an accident. A story where 9 very different people coming together felt less like a lineup and more like destiny. So if you look at Twice today, don't only see the polished present. Remember the anxious beginning behind it. Because once you know how they began, the stage they stand on now feels even more powerful. And maybe, in the end, you'll come to this one thought. Twice was not simply made. They were a team that survived, endured, and became